Howdy, Marijuana Nation. Before we jump into the news, I just want to give you a quick update on our struggles to produce 4 shows every week, I guess. As you noticed on Wednesday this week, we actually did put a show together, which is good because I think I figured out how I can actually get some work done on Wednesdays. For those who have not heard, my life has been disrupted by coronavirus restrictions just with my kiddos in school, and it's making it hard on Wednesdays and Thursdays to do any work, but I've figured out Wednesdays. So I'm working on Thursdays, and I think I'm going to be able to pull that together. So over the next week or two, we should be transitioning back into a 4 shows a week operation, which will have us producing shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So, yeah, that'll be good because that's what we want to do. So anyways, that's just an update on that. So, all right, let's get into today's news. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Curaleaf, one of the nation's leading providers of adult use and medical marijuana products, with 93 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, all serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers in 23 operating states. Learn more about all the good work done by everyone at Curaleaf at their website, curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled Curaleaf. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, October 23rd, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 995 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We start the day's news off in Montana, where the state's Supreme Court has tossed out a challenge to the adult use ballot measure going before voters during the November elections. The suit was filed by the prohibitionist group Wrong for Montana and argued that the adult use ballot measure ran afoul of a state law over how funding is appropriated. The Supreme Court rejected that reasoning just on Wednesday, which is good because voters are already voting on the measure during early voting right now. Polling on this measure is running high on the side of progressive supporters, so hopefully we'll have some good news to report on this storyline in a couple of weeks. Our second headline of the day swings us up to Pennsylvania, where the state's House of Representatives voted earlier this week to approve a proposed bill protecting medical marijuana patients from being charged with DUI offenses. The protective measure was part of a larger bill dealing with more general transportation issues and passed by a vote of 109 to 93. This is an important issue for any state with medical marijuana because under current testing practices, any regular user of cannabis is going to show hot on a roadside drug test, even if they weren't actually under the influence of cannabis. That's because the testing markers for marijuana can stick around in your body for weeks, especially in more regular consumers as medical marijuana patients. It's fantastic news that this passed, and it's something we need to see everywhere. Pop over to Kyle Yeager's piece on this for more if you want. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Marijuana Business Daily takes us out of the top headlines with a check-in up in Canada, where Statistics Canada just released sales figures for the nation's legal marijuana industry through the month of August. As their numbers and Marijuana Business Daily's chart shows, sales continue to grow in the nation, rising 5% month over month in August to just under $245 million Canadian. That brings the total annual haul through August to a touch over $1.5 billion, again in dollars Canadian. You can pop over to Marijuana Business Daily for more here or to click through to Statistics Canada's website, which actually lets you poke around the data in a relatively handy way. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Curaleaf, one of the nation's leading providers of adult use and medical marijuana products, with 93 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, all serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers in 23 operating states. Curaleaf has grown from a company with just a handful of shops located up here in the Northeast to one of the leading companies in the world of legal cannabis in just a few short years. With shops and facilities now located all across the country, the chances of there being a Curaleaf shop to you to visit has never been better. And did you know that Curaleaf is also a major player in the worlds of legal hemp and adult use, with Curaleaf Hemp, Select, and Grassroots all existing under its corporate umbrella? You can learn all the things you want to know about Curaleaf, including the location of its closest shop, over at curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled Curaleaf. Big thanks to everyone at Curaleaf for the support that helps us keep the news lights running. All right, time for the Blitz. Kyle Yeager has another story on the day, this one a meta take, as Governor Jared Polis of Colorado replied on Twitter to a post made by Marijuana Moments' Tom Angel, telling the state of Texas that it would be better for Colorado tourism if Texas were to just keep marijuana illegal. The jokey message originated as a retweet of one from Tom, pointing out how much money Texas would realize via taxes and fees were it to legalize adult use, a storyline we actually touched upon here earlier this week on The Daily. It's nice to see cannabis normalized enough that governors are joking about it like this. David Downs over at Leafly is a story that you're going to want to read today for sure, as he dives into a lot of numbers for how the nation's legal wholesale marijuana market is looking for the year. In a nutshell, prices seem to be up almost everywhere, as the wildfires ripping through the West have burned up supply, making it one of the better years in recent memory for those who do grow and managed to pull in an unaffected crop. David is even reporting that pounds of wholesale cannabis in California have been selling for as much as $3,400. As I said, give this one a read for sure. Multi-state cannabis operator Jushi Holdings just announced that it is raising $35 million Canadian, or around 26 million US, through the issuance of 10 million shares up on the Canadian Securities Exchange. It's not a bad thing to see fundraising deals these days, given the overall state of the world. The state of West Virginia signed a deal with Florida-based company Metrc to run a seed-to-sale tracking system that will oversee the state's legal medical marijuana program. West Virginia has very slowly been implementing its medical marijuana program and says it expects to start issuing patient cards starting next spring. That brings the total number of states using Metrc to 15, in addition to the District of Columbia. The Growth Op picked up on some great news out of Michigan, where it appears that 69-year-old Michael Thompson, who's been in prison for 25 years on a 40 to 60-year stretch for selling marijuana to an undercover police officer back in the 90s, is scheduled for a parole hearing next month. Marijuana is now legal in Michigan, and even if it weren't, it's cruel and immoral to think it's okay to lock people up behind bars for their entire lives for selling it. Mr. Thompson will go up before the parole board on November 17th. We wish him the best of luck, and we'll certainly report back if anything good comes of his hearing. A judge in Oregon has ruled against a lawsuit filed by a pair of winemakers seeking to block their neighbors from growing commercial cannabis. You might remember hearing about this case, which popped up first back in 2017, and that sought to claim that the smell of growing marijuana was somehow harmful to nearby grape-growing farms. In her ruling, Yamhill County Circuit Court Judge Cynthia Easterday said that this was not an easy decision to make, but that ultimately there was not enough actual evidence showing any kind of actual damage. And finally for today, we end the show on the other side of the world in New Zealand, where government officials have issued a request for proposals for an educational document helping doctors learn about the best practices for medical cannabis. The $33,000 project calls for the creation of a pamphlet covering the very basics of medical marijuana and is part of a larger overall effort to improve the medical marijuana educational resources available to doctors. New Zealand voters recently went to the polls and voted on a number of candidates and issues, including an adult use legalization measure that will be reporting back from results-wise later this month. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again Tuesday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Curaleaf, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mgatodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in, starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.